Hello and welcome to Leadership PRN. This is the Dalhousie Faculty of Medicine podcast for leaders both new and emerging. My name is Dr. Lara Hazelton. I'm a psychiatrist in my clinical practice with an interest in leadership and medical education. Today I'm very pleased to have with us Dr. Chris Watling. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Lara.
It's really nice to have the chance to have you on the show because I've known you somewhat over the years. I actually know your brother quite well. He's a psychiatrist, and we trained together. And you have these Nova Scotian roots. And do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your leadership roles that you've had in medical education?
Sure. Yes, I'm happy to be the other Watling brother here. I graduated from medical school at Dalhousie in 1990. I will just say I say yes to every invitation from Dalhousie because my medical experience was really great. I loved it, and I love the faculty, and I love the place. I am a neurologist by clinical training. From a leadership perspective, I probably sort of fell into leadership roles. Maybe that's the way it is for a lot of people. I don't think I set out aspiring to do this kind of work. And if you had told me when I was finishing medical school that where I am now is where I would end up, I would have been absolutely shocked. But along the way, opportunities come along. And I think the first leadership role I had was as a program director. I was the program director at Western for neurology for about 6 years. Loved it. I have to say, I'm not sure I really even thought of it as a leadership role so much as an opportunity to do fun and interesting things with residency education and to connect with teaching residents, which I really liked a lot. And then after that, I, for about 9 years, was the postgraduate dean at Western, which I loved. That remains one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had. I think as a starting point, I kind of got into that also because I was interested in residency education and in medical education in general. But I think gradually I became more and more interested in some of the policy aspects of it, some of the opportunities to work collectively across the country and to shape residency education and also to grapple with some of the real problems of medical education and medical practice in a way that was larger than I had been able to do, in my own place and within my own program. So I really, really liked that job. And then I've done a couple of different things since then. I had a vice dean role after that for a while at Western and also was the director of a medical education research center, which I quite liked, but which was a real departure. And I think, it pushed me in some different directions leadership-wise. And then I have this new job that I've just had for the last 6 months or so at the Royal College.
And your role with the Royal College, what's that title?
Right. So I'm the CEO of the Royal College, and I just started in July of 2024.
It's interesting you said that your first real leadership role was as a program director. And we did a survey a while ago here at Dalhousie of our leaders in the academic roles. And it's really amazing how many of our leadership positions are residency program director positions. There's a lot of program directors out there, and they have a lot of influence. I don't know. I think you're right. I don't think they always think of their leadership role and how important it is.
I think that's right. I think it's a great opportunity to do some interesting leadership work, even if you don't look at it that way. There's actually quite a lot of autonomy in a program director role. There are opportunities to make some changes, to shape things in the direction that you think is important or that might be meaningful or that might make a difference for residents. And that's actually quite interesting and exciting work. Whether it's a small program or a large program, you have a little community that you can work within and move in the direction that you think is useful and important. And often from your department chair, from your dean, from your postgraduate dean, you really get quite a lot of latitude to do the things that are meaningful to you. You have a chance to do some innovative things as well, to try things that haven't been tried before. And so it's actually a really lovely sort of growth area, I think, for new leaders.
Do you think there were things that you learned in that role that you've carried into your other leadership roles?
Oh, what a great question. Undoubtedly. I think in that role, and also I think even more in the postgraduate dean role, I learned a lot of things about change and change management, and also about who needs to be engaged and when they need to be engaged and what conversations you need to be able to have in order to actually think about moving things in a different direction. And in some ways, I learned just by mistakes, learn by thinking I had told everybody and communicated as widely as I needed to, and then finding out after I tried to do something that people felt like they had been left out of the loop. Those are really important lessons, I think, just about how you build consensus and how you kind of get a group collaborating and feeling like they're all part of something.
And then you mentioned the education research, and I know our listeners might know this or might not, that you've published a lot in the area of education scholarship.
Thanks for noticing that. I had, I would say, a mid-career transformation to becoming a researcher, also completely unexpected for me. When I was in my mid-40s, I finished a PhD in health professions education. I wouldn't have ever imagined that for myself, but somewhere along the line, I got really, really interested in and engaged with research in medical education. The kind of research that I do is actually sort of social science-oriented qualitative research. It was not the kind of research that I'd ever been exposed to in medical school. And in fact, when I kind of discovered that was a way of doing research, it really spoke to me, and it really connected with things that I cared about and allowed me to actually explore and try to answer questions that I thought were really relevant and meaningful to the work that I was doing. So rather unexpectedly, I found myself, as a researcher and developing and leading research projects, and eventually starting to teach and mentor people about how to do education research. It was a really, I think, unexpected but really exciting change in my career direction. That I think in some ways has really informed a lot of the other things that I do. So I think that medical education researchers are helped by also doing leadership work, because it connects them to the kinds of problems that really matter to the community, the more frontline pragmatic problems that people are really grappling with day to day. And at the same time, I think leaders are probably helped by having a foot in the world of research, because it gives them hopefully a little bit more grounding in what do we actually know about this problem? What have other people already found and tried and failed with before? And how can we make smart leadership choices and smart policy choices based on what researchers are doing? So this kind of combination of research work and leadership work has, for me, been really, really helpful, and has kind of kept me interested and kept me inspired.
What led you to pursue a leadership role with the Royal College?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I think it's fair to say that I didn't pursue it initially. I was ultimately persuaded. Sometimes people around you can know you a little bit better than you know yourself in terms of what you envision for yourself. This particular job that I have now, the CEO job at the Royal College, is probably the first time that I said to colleagues, what do you think about this job? And people said, yes, that sounds like it would really suit you. I've sometimes put forward other ideas that people have said, well, if that's what you want to do, I'd be supportive of you. But they haven't necessarily seen it as, a great fit. I had a few people tell me that they thought that this would be a good job for me to think about. And I don't think that I would have considered it without that. So that I'm grateful for that kind of push from others. But I think there are a couple of other reasons. One really key one for me is I have been, like a lot of people listening probably, I've been engaged with the Royal College as a volunteer over several years. My main connection has been in the world of accreditation, and I sat on the Residency Accreditation Committee for about a decade and chaired it for the last 2 or 3 years prior to starting this job. And I'd also been an accreditation surveyor and led or co-led a couple of accreditation survey visits. That's a ton of work. Being on the Residency Accreditation Committee was more preparatory work than I've ever done for any other committee in my life. And yet, I always left every committee meeting feeling like we had done meaningful work and feeling like my time had been well spent. And I think in talking to my colleagues that was very much a shared sentiment. And that's, I think, a rare thing when you have a committee that is a ton of work, to come away consistently feeling like it's been a really useful investment of your time over several years. So I really appreciated the sense that my time was not being wasted, that I was invested in work that was really meaningful. And so looking at the Royal College, I really felt like if this is an organization that can consistently help its volunteers feel as though the time that they're giving, the time away from their regular jobs and their families, is worthwhile, then that's an organization I'd like to be part of. The last thing is I felt like, perhaps because of the background in medical education and the research background in particular, that I had the content expertise to be able to offer something to this job. I don't really like to lead things where I feel like I don't know the subject matter really, really well. And so this was an area where I felt like I knew the subject matter quite well, and so I also thought that it was a good fit. There's an element of luck in these things too. Like a lot of people, I've applied for jobs more than once that I haven't gotten, leadership jobs that I haven't gotten. And so it's not all about why did I decide to do this. It's a bit of a match between thinking that maybe I would put my name forward, and also finding an organization that felt like I was the right person at the right time. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you think you're the right person and the organization doesn't agree. So this was just a bit of good luck at the right time too.
I was interested when you said that other people, when you mentioned that you were thinking about this job, other people thought this was a really good match. I'm wondering, when you think about that now and with the perspective of having been in the job for a while, what do you think they were seeing, and do you think they were right?
I hope they were right. 6 months in, I am enjoying the job a lot. And I am still looking forward to a year or two from now where I really feel at the top of my game. I think when you start something brand new, there's a lot to learn, and it's hard to feel as as capable as you might have felt in your previous job that you'd been in for a while and you knew how everything worked. So I'm kind of looking forward still to being at that point, because I think jobs are more fun when you feel like you're really on top of it and you've got all the skills that you need to have and you've built the relationships that you need to build. What did they see? A lot of the people who sort of emailed this job to me and said, "Are you going to apply for this?" I think had seen me in action in the kinds of contexts that this job actually requires me to be in a lot. In meetings related to decision making around education development and education policy and that sort of thing. And I think what they may have recognized, what I hope they recognized, was just a bit of pragmatism and what I hope is an ability to have people feel as though their voices are heard around a table and that they've been listened to and given the respect that they deserve, and then sort of a capacity to try to bring those sometimes disparate voices to a bit of a consensus. I feel like if I have any skills in leadership, they're probably related to that, just that sort of ability to help to bring people to a way forward that hopefully most of the time, most people feel pretty good about.
It's nice to be encouraged, isn't it? And told that you might be good at a job, because as you say, there's jobs a person applies for, you get, you don't get. But it's nice to hear the confidence of the people who encouraged you to apply.
It is, and I think it's worth listening to. I for this job, I will tell you that I initially dismissed it when the job was first posted. I had 3 or 4 people who wrote to me and said, "This one, you should apply for this." And I said, I don't think so. And so in retrospect, I think it's really helpful to listen to that and to ask yourself, why would people come forward and bother to tell you this? There's new jobs that are posted all the time. And most of the time, we don't get people saying, "You should really consider this one." And so when they do, I think it's really worth, kind of interrogating, why are people saying that? What are they seeing? And how might that influence a decision?
So in terms of opportunities for people to be involved with the Royal College, you mentioned that often people volunteer, some capacity, exam boards, and so on. Are there some opportunities that people might have to get involved with the Royal College that would be more something that people could reach out for rather than being selected like an examiner role? Just curious if there are listeners who think, yeah, I'd love to be involved with the Royal College. What would be a way for them to get involved?
Absolutely. I will say, first of all, the Royal College couldn't do anything without people volunteering, and a lot of them. At any given time, we have probably 4,000 or 5,000 volunteer fellows doing everything from exam boards to accreditation work to research and policy development work. So the engine runs entirely on that volunteer energy. I think we have some work to do at the college to making ourselves more open and more accessible. I think sometimes there are people out there who will say, that looks like interesting work, but I don't know how those people got on those committees, or I don't know how those individuals get those kinds of roles. So it's a great opportunity for me to give people a bit of information about how they can get those kind of roles. First of all, some of the work that people often find interesting and wonder about getting involved in relates to accreditation. So accreditation gives you opportunities to visit other places and look at other programs and see how they're doing related to standards. And a couple of ways to get involved in that. the first thing I would say is let your own postgraduate dean at your own faculty of medicine know that you're interested. They will find work for you locally first, doing internal reviews of programs at your own university, which every school has to do. And then if you've done that once or twice and you still think it's interesting, then they can actually suggest you to the Royal College as a potential surveyor for other schools. And we would love to sign you up because the accreditation enterprise is growing as new schools and new programs come along. And we're going to need more people to volunteer. I will say we particularly are interested in people who can do accreditation visits in French as well as in English. It's not a requirement, but we have a little more struggle in being able to find Francophone fellows or bilingual fellows who can do accreditation visits in French. So if you have those skills, we would especially love to hear from you. We have a whole bunch of different committees at the Royal College, ranging from council, which is like our board of directors, to some what are called national advisory committees, which have just recently been struck to focus on issues of concern across the country, like entry into practice, rural and remote practice, planetary health, physician wellness, and so on. And all of these committees, we have now an annual open call for people to put their names forward and to be considered. And I would encourage people to look to the website. It's in the fall. It's just finishing up now, but have a look for next year. And we will list the committee vacancies and some descriptions of the different committees and what the work involves. And we invite people to apply. And sometimes, if we get a whole bunch of applications for one thing and not enough applications for another, we might say to somebody, we don't have space this year, but we do have these other committees that you might be interested in. We're really committed to trying to find a place for people, even if it's not necessarily the place that they were initially thinking. And then, of course, if you're interested in residency education and you're doing some teaching of residents, that might be a way of getting involved in things like exam boards. So lots of different ways of doing it. I think I would say, number one, if you're at a faculty of medicine, talk to your postgraduate dean or your program director and ask them, because they're often really well connected and they meet with us all the time. If you're not, if you're in a community setting, great. We need more of those voices. And I would say, look to our website, look for the opportunities to engage with us, send an email, and just say you're interested, and we will get back to you and we'll talk about ways of connecting in.
Chris, thank you so much for meeting with us today. I know that you must be extremely busy with your role, and I think a lot of us are familiar with the Royal College, but we don't necessarily know about all these opportunities. So I appreciate that, and really appreciate hearing some of your insights about leadership as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's been a real pleasure.
And that's another episode of Leadership PRN. If you have someone you think I should speak with or a topic you'd like to hear me cover, you can feel free to reach out to me at lara.hazelton@nshealth.ca or lara.hazelton@dal.ca. Until next time, take care.